Debelius to the show then. Welcome, Ronan. Thanks for joining. Awesome intro. We appreciate it. Ronan and I go way back because you don't have May here. She's at work. She wanted to say hi to you, by the way. But when May and I went to our last Liverboard trip on Raja Ampat, we were on the Corlea. By the way, I've still got my bag and use it all the time. And our cruise director was the one and only Ronan, Mr. Ronan here. And we had lots of great conversations in between dives, and he was such a fascinating guy. And I really wanted to have him on the podcast, and he graciously agreed to join us. So welcome, Ronan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks. One of the things I found was so fascinating was just your story, because you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, part Indonesian and part German. You were born in Germany. Were you born in Germany? Why don't you give us a brief introduction, and we'll take it from there. I don't need to tell you the story, and you can correct me. I'd love to.
Todd, why don't you tell us about Ronan?
Yeah, let me tell you more about Ronan.
I would love to hear my story. No, seriously. Yeah. No, it's cool. The short and quick version, born and raised in Germany, traveled around the world a bunch, ended up in Indonesia, and connected somewhat with my roots. And thanks to a lot of background from my father's profession, I was able to get into the industry, I guess it would be tourism, yeah. Tourism, liveaboards, and primarily diving. And I was fortunate enough to be able to make a living off of it and actually have a career in the last 7 years up until COVID-19, but oh well.
Yes.
So you've been in Indonesia for the last 7 years, the whole time?
Correct.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And as far as diving, are you an instructor, dive master, just a diver?
What do you think? Of course, I'm an instructor.
I think you're a course director. But
well, thank you. Yes. I lead the whole thing. No, I did do an instructor course and all of that good stuff, but I'm one of those few lucky ones who can say that he's not actually an instructor. Well, not lucky. It's just a weird thing to explain to people, to be honest, when you say, yeah, I'm an instructor, but I don't really teach, so, but yeah, that is my title as a PADI diver.
Right on. Yeah. Right on.
And so when we met, we were on Corlea, which was one of the is still one of the premier liverboards in Raja Ampat in all of Indonesia. Actually, right before we left, I think one of the dive mags in UK listed them the top liverboard in all of Raja Ampat, and
nice.
Mr. Ronan was there running the whole operation. So, why don't we just start there? Like, how long were you working on Corlea? I know you were working alongside the other guys. I forget their names that were also cruise directors. Tell us a little. Debbie and Jerry, who, if you hear Corlea, a lot of people know Debbie and Jerry too. So tell us about how you got in touch with Corlea and what it was like, running things over there when you were there.
Well, with Coralia, the way it happened, she is my third vessel at this moment that I've been working on. And yeah, I've had a few years on different boats as well as on land. And during that time, I actually made a lot of connections in regards to people living and working in the industry in Indonesia. And I actually knew Debbie and Jerry, and they used to work on another liveaboard. And another friend of mine who said, hey, buddy, there's this dream job. I don't think it's real, but I saw this post and you should check it out because I think this would be something for you. And what it said, it was, we're looking for part-time cruise director. And usually the gig comes with a full-time, 11 months on doing the whole shabam up until you get that 1 month of vacation.
Freedom.
It is a nonstop thing. And what I always wanted to do, or at least try to work towards is to get some more free time and be able to travel a lot more. I mean, granted, my job is all about traveling. I'm constantly on the move, but essentially, I wanted to go check out places beyond Indonesia and Europe, for instance. And that's why I jumped on the offer. And yeah, I wrote them, and within probably the same 24 hours, I got accepted because knowing people is what it's all about.
It's not what you know, it's who you know, and it clearly is never more so true than in the dive industry, and probably even more so in Indonesia, right? So
This is very true.
yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
But let's go back and kind of start with. So you grew up in Germany. Did you grow up in the Frankfurt area? That's where you're talking to us from now. Uh, but you also spent some time in the States. I think you went to college there. Is that right? Or
That is right.
am I
High
remembering
school
correct?
and college.
Okay. Yeah. So tell us just kind of your background of all your travels growing up, and then when did you first get interested in diving or water, and go from and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, for me, this starts at the very beginning. My dad happens to be an underwater photographer and an author as well. So he was in the field from way before I was actually conceptualized, so to say. And when I was born, my parents always used to drag me around everywhere they went. You know, a lot of the places were in Southeast Asia. A lot of them were Indonesia, due to the fact that my mom's Indonesian and that my dad absolutely loved the archipelago. And yeah, I got to see it quite a bit. And finally, at around, I think 6, my mom finally allowed my dad to take me on a little discover scuba diving kind of thing, you know, where he would take me down on the octopus. And you know, to me, it was 20 meters. It was probably only 2 meters. I don't know what that's in feet. Sorry, guys. Metric system. But yeah, so I started diving then. And then at around 8, Patty actually introduced a bubble maker. So my dad jumped on it and let me do the bubble maker. So I've been diving from a very young age. And don't ask me how many dives I have. I have no idea. But yeah, I was fortunate to be able to do that, but I took a long hiatus from diving in of itself because of school and everything. And as you mentioned, I was born and raised here in Germany, which I'm currently residing in again. And it was more of a landlocked situation in which I just didn't go diving. And once the opportunity came about to move to the United States, I took it, and I actually went to California and stayed there for quite a bit. I did do some cold water diving in Monterey Bay, which was pretty wicked in both senses of the word, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Beautiful, but so cold. So
yes.
cold. Oh, thank you. But regardless of that, you know, I ended up staying in the US for quite some time. And once that was done, to fast forward towards the diving part, I went back to Germany and tried my luck here just to see what it would be like after such a long absence. I was nearly gone for about 10 years or so, 9 years. And then I came back, and it just wasn't really for me back then at that point in time in my life. And I always wanted to connect to the other part of my roots, you know, my heritage. And that's why I figured, why not go to Indonesia?
Now, did you always want to work in tourism or hospitality, or did you want to be something else growing up?
Just do whatever it could take to get roots in Indonesia, and that was the path of least resistance.
The diving part, I shunned it for quite some time. Not shunned it, that's too much. I would say I'd exaggerate on that point. But I just simply didn't take the route that was already offered and that was presented to me by my parents, which happened to be in the tourism industry. My mom being a travel agent, my dad traveling all over the world all the time and doing these things. So it kind of, I sort of got, what's the saying, the silver spoon in that sense. Yes. And I was very, very fortunate because I did know a lot of people, and a few key individuals were the ones that made this happen and made it happen in such a fast and wonderful way. And when I moved to Indonesia, I figured, okay, I'm going to talk to some people and do something with this diving business. You know, I've been avoiding it all my life. And you know how it is with parents and children. You try to prove them wrong as a kid, but in the end, they usually are right. So props to you, pops and mom. You guys were right.
That's what I always tell people. The older I get, the smarter my parents get.
That's
right. It's like, oh, damn, they made a lot of sense back then. Why didn't I listen?
Now, did you have...
Yeah, that's exactly how it went. You know, I just listened to them, and I tried my luck, and I was very fortunate to be able to have some opportunities that developed into me having a career
That's awesome.
Were your dreams elsewhere? So what did you go to school for? Did you were thinking you were going to go and you were going to be an engineer or some other crazy profession initially?
Well,
Why you were originally apprehensive to follow in the parents' footsteps?
no, it's just like one of those youthful mistakes, it's like, no, I shall never do anything that my parents did, kind of deal. So I just tried my own luck with
same way.
Whatever have you, if I studied environmental science and I really wanted to do something in that sense, because I always thought to myself, it's like, okay, academics is fine and dandy, but how do you actually use it and what's actually important? And that's what college actually showed me, because back then it wasn't more about what GPA you got or anything like that. It was more about, let's see what this is like. Let's see if it's, first of all, like in the movies, because I'm European and you see a lot of movies and colleges are crazy. At least they're represented that way. And all of that good stuff was fun. But I thought to myself, environmental science would be the best because I do love being in nature. So that does coincide with my profession as of now, in which I'm constantly outside. I'm actually in it. I'm not talking about it. I'm not drawing graphs around it, blah, 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 blah. I'm actually there. I'm actually, if I were to partake in a study, I would be the person you'd probably talk to about, the wealth of knowledge on the spot.
Right.
So in that sense, I think I did do my studies some justice, because I do get to see quite a lot of things, and being in the ring of fire is quite interesting, and having the background of talking about those kind of things in environmental science just let me have at it.
So for those that aren't familiar with Indonesia, tell people what ring of fire represents, just in case you're not familiar with it.
Sure thing. So the ring of fire is the world's largest ring, quote unquote, of volcanoes, and it's the largest volcanic activity currently at this point in time. And it's Indonesia in of itself consists of 17,500 islands plus. And I say plus because, again, it's volcanic and it's still growing. Take, for instance, Hawaii, the big island, it's still bubbling and it's still growing. It's going to be much bigger in thousands of years when none of us are here anymore. But that's basically what's happening in all of Southeast Asia, not just Indonesia. It's quite a big area, actually, but Indonesia is the hotspot.
Right on. So when you first decided, okay, I'm going to make the leap, I'm going to finally follow in my parents' footsteps. I'm going to go back to my roots. I'm headed to Indonesia, and I'm thinking about trying to find a job there. Take us from there. Where did you start off as your base of operations? Did you reach out before you actually went there to get a job lined up? Or did you go out there and say, hey, I'm just going to go because maybe I have relatives or something I can stay with, and start looking for a job? How did that work for you?
Well, it was a mix of a lot of things. Honestly, it was just a swift kick in the ass from my dad saying, good luck to you. And I figured it out. But before that happened, actually, I did have some, some talks with some friends, with a family and the such, who put in a good word for me in certain areas. And when I got to Indonesia, I actually had a gig lined up, which was in North Sulawesi, in Manado, for Murex. And when I was at Murex, I started basically an internship. And there they just tested me. It's like I came there with nothing, not even dive gear really, which was nuts back then. I still remember my boss saying, it's like, oh, you're a funny guy, you're coming here to a dive shop without even dive gear. What do you expect? I'm like, I know, but I'm trying to figure this out as I'm going. It's like I'm hitting the road running. But it was interesting to see. And there I met another great friend of mine, Pim Van Schendel, and he's a really, really cool guy who's doing his own thing now in Manado as well. But him and I got along really well. And at one point or another, the big boss, Danny Charlton is his name. He actually put me on this island called Bangka, which is also a very beautiful dive destination. So for all of those who don't know, North Sulawesi, you go there and you go to this island right on top of it. It's called Bangka. It's the best place to be isolated if you really want to live the Robinson Crusoe life. And that's where I stayed for a few months until I was offered the opportunity, thanks to my work at that place, to work for another location, which was the Lembe Resort, which is not too far off. So for those scuba divers who are really into macro diving, you might know Lembe from all the tales and legends. It's a unique place. It's a beautiful place. And I was fortunate enough to work at, the most prestigious resort around there. And
so you actually worked at Lembe Resort, right? Which is people that are not familiar with, although we've talked about Lembe Resort on a few different podcasts. There's a lot of resorts in Lembe, but Lembe Resort is one of the premier, if not the premier destination. I think
at least while Ronan was working there, it was the premier.
So
exactly.
Okay, cool. I don't know if Dimpy was working back then. I mean, this was probably a long time
Dimpy
ago.
was working back then.
Okay.
Yeah, Dimpy was there. Shout out to you, Dimpy.
Hey, Dimpy. Yeah, we talked about her a lot of time. I've been at Lembe Resort, and Dimpy was awesome, and we've chatted. I keep trying to get her to come on the podcast also, but she doesn't.
You should. She's a wealth of knowledge.
She is. She's awesome.
Wow.
She's so sweet. Anyway, so what did you do for Lembe Resort? Did you run, were you running, guest relations? Were you on the boat, leading dives? What were you doing at Lembe Resort?
So I got hired to be the interim in an interim manager position. At first, it was guest relations manager, in which the general manager was still there, and they were just working off the time that was still allotted to them. And there was a time frame in which the old couple had left, or the old management team, and the new management team would come in, and I just bridged that part. And that's when I worked for the resort as first guest relations manager, just to see how everything's going, how everything works out on land, and get the insights to all of what's going on behind the scenes. And later on, I sort of kind of took off the mantle of the the general manager, and managed to do that for a while. But if it wasn't for the entire team over there, and trust me, Lembe Resort, if you haven't gone there, it is a well-oiled machine. These people know what they're doing. You'll never look or ask for anything. It's amazing, and their support has made my experience there so much more fantastic. And during that time, this is where a lot of people also in the industry kept on talking to me, because I was fresh in Indonesia. I was new. And the fortunate thing was, I speak English, obviously. I speak German, which is really helpful with a lot of German clientele around there. And I was beginning to learn or relearn Indonesian again back then, because at the tender age of 6, I made the stupid mistake of telling myself, I don't really need Indonesian anymore. I'm just going to stop speaking the language, because, nobody knows where Indonesia is here. And if I have to explain it every time, I'm going to go crazy. So I was learning Indonesian, and they're saying, hey, for you to do yourself a huge favor and make an impact as best as possible for yourself, is if you were to actually consider going on a liveaboard. First of all, you would be sort of similarly doing everything I was doing on the resort side, but much more involved, because once you're on a boat, it's not just, the hierarchy system. It's, you got to do whatever you got to do in order to get things going. There is no if, buts, and or the other guy, So they told me, it's like, and most of the time, because these people are on a boat, they don't necessarily find it to be a requirement to know or learn English. And that is actually their right to do so. We are in Indonesia, after all. Yes, I am half Indonesian, but the least I could do is learn their language to communicate with them.
Right.
So that's exactly what I took from it. And once I started, warming up to the idea, I jumped right into it after my gig in Lembe Resort, and that's when the boat life started.
Nice. And how long have you been doing the boat life now?
Boat life? 6 years now? Yeah, nice. Something like that.
7 years, yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that first? What was the first liveaboard that you got after that?
So the first liverboard that I got to afterwards, I had just gone back to Bali from Manado, and I had stayed at one of those people that I had briefly mentioned when I said those were the key figures that really helped me get along and make a career for myself. And one of them is Doris Vierkata, who owns Alam Batu Resort up in northeastern Bali, which is a wonderful dive resort. Highly recommend that as well. It is the best. I'm slightly biased, but it is the best. What am I going to say?
That's it.
So I just hung out with her. She's basically another mother of mine. I love that person so much. And through her, I met, again, a bunch of people. And ironically enough, the people who used to be cruise directors on the Liverboard that I was going to start working on were starting to work for Doris at Alam Batu. And they put in, well, they asked me, it's like, are you sure you really want to do this? We'll put in a good word at our former bosses. He's always looking. And that guy happened to be Eddie Formenvilla, who is the owner of the Pindito, which happens to be the reason all of us go to Raja Ampat. He is the man. He is the explorer. He is, so I got the honor tell us about that history, since most really know that that's kind of the start of the popularity of Raja Ampat. Yeah, thanks to Eddie and Pindito. Seriously, you got to take it way back. Well, way back, everything's relative, but the 90s, the early 90s, you can say there were about 4 liverboards back then. I would please remember that number, 4 liverboards. Total. Once we get to now and we talk about how many there are now, it's going to be like, whoa, nuts. But 4 being the Baruna, the Chehili, the Evening Star or something star, I forget, and of course Pindito. And back in the day, this Swiss man came to the Indonesian archipelago and wanted to explore and figured, how do I best see a bunch of islands? I'll build myself a boat.
By boat.
And this pioneer said, I'm going to go there, there, and there. Nobody ever's been there. Let's do this. So back in the day, you might have known about Komodo, which already was starting to become a national park, but it was already a dive destination for a lot of people. But again, 4 boats. And then you keep on going east, you go into the Banda Sea, you go into the Moluccas, and then you go all the way further up north, and you end up going to, back then still probably Irian Jaya, which now is Papua. And Eddie said, you know how cool it is? It's like a fantasy, like a childhood fantasy. You know, you have this pirate map, and you have this big white blob there. What's in that white blob? And this man said, I'm going to go there. And he did. He discovered it. Most of the dive sites we go to are credited to him. Of course, there's a lot of other people like Max Ammers, who did the first resort in Raja Ampat, and a slew of other individuals who then discovered more dive sites. But, you know, honor to those who deserve it. And Eddie is the guy. So, awesome. I was 2 years under him, worked for him for quite some time. And seeing everything from Indonesia, guys, if you haven't been there, I mean, I know, Todd, Dalton, have you been there? No. Oh, dude, been trying to get him for years to go. We were talking about doing something, but then COVID hit. So, but he's going to be going soon enough. Him and his wife. So, but yeah, it's one of my favorite places to dive. I mean, we've been to Raja Ampat twice because of it, and Komodo is awesome also. And that's only scratching the surface of all the amazing places to see. But so then your boat life started, and you're spending most of your time on a boat now, right? So 24/7.
How is that? What was that like? What's it like living? For those that aren't used to being that. What are some of the? Obviously, you have lots of joys and benefits of. I mean, the service industry in general, but the fact that now you're on a boat full time. Working in this industry, are there anything that jumps out at you, like what's really amazing about it, and then what maybe you don't think of that's you miss, or that's really frustrating about that you're on a boat for your whole life for a given year? To say the least, there were a few adjustments. You
can imagine.
When I started, I was just in for the adventure. I love jumping into the unknown. It's just something that I guess it's a challenge. I don't even know if it's a challenge. It's just something that I enjoy, and then just see where you come out on at the end on the other end. And for me, it's been pretty good. And when I walked on the boat for the first time, I was like, whoa. I mean, you read the specs, whatever, 50, 80 meters long, 10 meters wide or something like that. But once you're there, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Remember what I said earlier before we started talking, when I walked into a house, everything seems so big now? Yeah. It's because of a boat. Everything's more compact and everything makes sense. There has to be a purpose to wherever anything is. And yeah, Pandita was my first introduction to it. And back then, I also shared a cabin with my buddy Eric, who is currently on the Gillies. So Eric Vandenberg, also a good guy. He runs a hotel down in Gili Trawangan right now. But obviously with the times, there's nothing going on there. Regardless, we spent some time there, and I was there for a lot of things. This boat was built in 1992. It is the only boat that is still running with 20 plus years on its back. And wow, it's just, it was such a motivational thing. It's inspirational to me, talking to Eddie, listening to him, hearing his stories, and knowing where that boat's been, what that boat's been through, and doing all of these things. Dry dock, guys. Boat life is one thing, but dry dock is, that's another paragraph to this entire beautiful sentence I'm going to talk about. But yeah,
well, I mean, we can get into it. That's when a boat goes to, like, so in between tours, at some point the boat's got to get serviced, right? So you got to put it in dry dock. As a member of the crew, what happens? Like, how much involvement do you actually have in the work that has to be done, if any?
Well, I was young back then, or younger, I should say. I was, as far as I knew, I was the youngest guy in that specific bubble of cruise directors and all of these things.
Yeah.
And it's not easy necessarily when, hierarchy also demands age. So you come in as a boss of people who are much older than you and much more experienced, because I'm not a boss by no means. It's just a title, that's all it is. So I learned this from Eddie too. It's just about showing that you're motivated, that you want to partake, and that you don't think that you're better than anybody else on that boat. Because if we weren't working as a team, as a union, we wouldn't get anywhere. We couldn't solve any problems, and it would be quite difficult. So even in dry dock, I actually did everything. I scrubbed, I sanded, I painted, I cut, I did everything. It was amazing. It was nuts, absolutely crazy, because all of that, there's a whole year leading up to that experience, because living on a boat, not being on land. And back then, and I got to say this, Jokowi, you kept your promise. He said he was going to connect Indonesia via planes and cell phone network. And when I started, guys, I saw the progression within a few years, where back in the day in certain coastlines, you'd be gone. This is what we're doing, a 14-day trip, 12-day trip, whatever. You're gone for 10 days. There is no reception. It's still the norm in Raja and in certain areas, but nowadays, it's like, compared to what it used to be, you can actually get messages. So you can communicate nowadays. Back then, you're just gone. You're off the radar, and that's it.
Off the grid. Off the grid.
So that was nuts in of itself, and but it was a new experience. It was beautiful. Every day you wake up in a different location. So you're waking up in the same spot on the boat, but you're in a different area. And that's what really gave me so much joy, to see a different scenario every day. And then, learning about these things, and especially when you're new, everything's just all the more fantastic. You already know Indonesia is great. The dive places I've been to have been amazing. What's next? What more can I see? And all of these things, and then all the different areas that we travel to, from all the way from Bali towards Komodo, into the Banda Sea, and then up into Raja Ampat, and all the way back. All of these things, it's phenomenal. My first year was breathtaking, absolutely. And then dry dock hit me in the face. I mean, boom! It seriously sucker punched me. And I was like, oh, this is the other part of being a cruise director and living the boat life, you know?
And I'm sure people don't realize that when you guys are running these, 10, 7, 14-day cruises, that when you guys have to turn them around, it's not like you get a day off to turn them around. You don't get a day off. You go from see you guys later to going to pick up supplies and everything else and loading the boat up for the next trip.
You are saying it, yes. Yeah. So I love it when, a lot of people say, oh, so you get a day off when we're done? I'm like, I wish.
Right.
As far as you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it was a little bit weird back in the day, but, you get used to it. And the first few years, were kind of intense. Under Eddie, it's like it was just, you had to be on, but I was learning, I was learning 24/7. So it was part of the game, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that opportunity looking back at it.
Now, did you get any downtime to yourself, like an hour here or there to, write letters to home, to mom and dad or whatever, or was it go the whole time?
I'd be lying, and I think anybody would, if you'd say, oh, I was constantly on doing nothing but work, that's just grand exaggeration in my opinion. But yeah, of course I got some time off. You have to have time off. You need to be able to say goodbye, good night, and there were times where I would literally call my boss and tell them, hey, today, I know I'm supposed to be doing this, but we are a team of cruise directors, so we've decided that one of us gets to go on land. And usually when that happened, we do a coin toss, and whoever got to go on land would straight up go into a hotel with no windows, shut everything down, and just sleep. Just order food to the room and just watch, speak, and just do nothing.
That's awesome.
It was the best.
I can imagine.
But yeah, during the cruise, you do get some time off, so of course. But the idea is to be there for the guests and for the crew, and just in general.
Nice.
Was it so most of the time when you're the cruise director, most of the rest of the crew typically tends to be locals, right? Born and raised in Indonesia. I assume that's right in your experience, Ronan?
Yep.
As someone that came from abroad who wasn't born there and has heritage there but wasn't born there, is there any difficulties or transition period? Obviously, once you guys get to know each other and bond, but did you find as you went from place to place within the service industry that you ran into some snags because you weren't also born and raised? I mean, you have youth as one issue, but the fact that you are not quote unquote native to the homeland, did you run into any issues there?
Well, none of the issues were unresolvable, so in that sense,
of course,
it was okay. But yeah, of course,
but not.
It's kind of weird, It's like I'm, for lack of a better word, half-breed. So regardless where I go, I don't necessarily belong. I've always had that in Germany. It's like, oh, you're the brown kid that speaks German very well. I'm like, yeah, I was born and raised here, And then you go over there, and you think to yourself, like, what's up, people? And they're like, whoa, dude, you're so white. I'm like, what? It's so weird. So the Indonesians even have a term for it, So if you ever go to Indonesia, Dalton, and you hear the word bule,
okay.
Bule means, for lack of a better word, non-Southeast Asian looking individual. Yeah. And for the Americans who've been to Hawaii, if you've been called a haole, that's a bule.
Gotcha.
So only with the Hawaiians, they made it the one without breath. So that's even harder. That's wow. That's a different history story. But yeah, so they consider me as a bule, the locals, but they do appreciate the fact that I try talking in their language. They know I'm half Indonesian, but considering that I was born and raised in Germany, they don't see me as anything Indonesian. But they see me as an individual who is at least trying to grasp the language. And speak to them on even terms.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And that's what I really, really tried for the first few years, it's just like not slide into this thing where in the hotel business, all of the Indonesians working there, they would always ask me, can we please speak English? I want to practice my English. And I'm like, but I want to speak Indonesian and practice my Indonesian. So that never went anywhere. And on the boat, I was finally forced because a bunch of those dudes, rightfully so, did not speak in English and didn't want to. And I was like, yeah, that's right. So, kabar, makan. The last sentence is, if you in Indonesian say that, all the Indonesians are going to fist bump you for that one, because makan dulu is sacred. It basically means let's eat first. First we
Like it.
Yeah.
So just to dial it back for a second, I think that's one thing that we can say for anywhere people travel, is that you should try to learn a little bit of the local language, because just that little bit that you're trying goes such a long way. It shows that you have a respect for their culture, and that you want to try to speak to them on their own terms. And I think that means a lot.
Yeah.
100%.
You said it. 1000%.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So let's
thank
eat
you.
first.
Good morning and good evening.
Yeah. And let's eat first. How does that go again?
Makan dulu.
Makan dulu. All
Yep.
right.
That's
it's an
awesome.
Indonesian proverb.
I like it. It'll be the unofficial title of this episode. Just
Right.
Makan dulu.
Let's do that.
Cool. Well, and obviously, anyone that's traveled abroad or spent any time abroad, you're going to have challenges like that. But then you also gain an appreciation for a different perspective in life. And I think that's always part of the joys of traveling anyway. But it's the extra struggle and joy of actually living and working abroad as you get those objectives. And it's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what else about becoming cruise director sounds glamorous, right? But more often than not, it's not like you're going on every dive. You have dive masters for that. So more often than not on the Corlea, you were not diving, right?
Yeah, because that is a privilege that I work towards, because back on YouTube, I was on every dive 4 times a day. Let's do this. So yeah, I started that way. It started off with me being a cruise director as well as one of the dive guides.
Mm-hmm.
And that was challenging because it's draining. It's really draining. And doing that for 11 months and then having a month off, it's nuts. And when I changed my position to another boat, which is the Amira, she is the biggest out of the cruise, the liverboards out there. She's Big Bertha is what I passionately call her.
Right on.
3 masters. So we used to have 3 masters. Now there's only 2, unfortunately. But she was the biggest one out of all of them. And then there's still the Dewi Nusantara. And previously there was the WOW, but that's a different story. Regardless, I started working there, and there I was able to separate myself from being a dive guide, in which I only went on dives when I wanted to or I had to. I would still offer my dive guides, because you got to take those guys into consideration too. They're doing this day in, day out for weeks on end, for months on end. So this is not easy on them either, and they have family and friends at home that they want to see as well, but they can't, because we're all on a boat and we're doing this right now. So if they're sick, or if they just wanted to take a break, or just get that 1 hour where they could just turn off, I mentioned that earlier with going to the hotels. For me, it's the same for those guys. So I would be like, hey, I'll guide, so I can guide, I can find stuff, it's like, that's a skill too, by the way. That's not something that just comes, and the Indonesians are gods. I mean, gods would be an insult to them, because these guys have eagle eyes of the best kind, and they find the coolest stuff. So I was always challenged, to try and find some stuff. And the best tip I ever got from an Indonesian dive guide, when I asked him once, it's like, how do you always find this cool stuff? It's like, where they are. And he said to me, if you look for a friend, where would you go to find him? And I was like, is this a philosophical question? I don't know. And then he looks at me, he's like, hey, Dodo, his home, where he lives, duh. And I was like, oh. But that's just that's still only 90% of the battle, because you kind of need to know where they live and what they do, whatever creature.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, you still got to be lucky to actually have that thing appear, you know, and then stay long enough for everybody to get a glimpse of it, or photographers to shoot it, you know.
Right.
Pictures, people, not no deaths, no animals were harmed in the making of this video.
Yes. Yes. When I refer to shooting, we're talking about taking pictures only. No,
I'm sorry,
no
but
spear
you
fishing.
guys do have the NRA back there, you know. So
that is true. We do love our
cold
guns.
dead hands.
Right.
Exactly right. So what are some of the amazing, so you've done all these dives. What are some of the is there any standout dive that you've been on that just blew your mind? Maybe it was the first time you saw something, or super rare, or just something that you specifically love?
Or place that you've been like was Limbe amazing?
I can tell you for
was
each
Komodo.
location what's amazing about it.
Okay.
So if you guys want to walk through it, you guys just say destination. I'll talk about it, because there is no one dive spot in the world that is the best dive spot, but the best dive region in the world is Indonesia. So in that sense, if you're visiting it, you're doing it right.
Well, it's just a matter of what's special to you. Like some people just have a favorite animal and I got to see, if you're in Amanas and they went to Mosul and got to be surrounded by, a billion of them.
Check it out.
Nice.
Whereas, everyone else, like for me, it was mandarin fish, at the time. And it's like, oh my gosh. And it's just whatever. But okay, we'll play this game. So let's start at Raja Ampat.
Dude,
what's your most memorable
maybe you should rewind that one, because you don't start with Mecca or the Vatican. That comes last.
Okay.
You go on a pilgrimage before you go there.
Right. Sure. Let's start in Bali or Gili Islands, somewhere around that area, not too far off.
Bali, I would definitely say up in the northeastern area. For those of you who might know the area, it's called Tulamben. I personally find that to be an amazing dive area. It's volcanic dive sites, so it's all black sand or rugged coral formations. There's also the Liberty, which is a wreck dive, which is amazing. But the beauty for me there, it's not scenic diving. It's not one of those aquarium kind of dives where you have beautiful corals. You do have corals, you do have cool stuff, massive fans and all that stuff. But what's really interesting, and this is not for everybody, especially if you're a beginner diver, but you will inevitably end up on the same train, which is the macro train. The macro life up there is phenomenal. I mean, whoa! You're looking for things that are this tiny. Maybe this is big. This is massive. But just getting that kick and the thrill out of those things, that I love it there. And it's also because, it's got sentimental values. I did my dive master there when I was 17, 18, and there's a lot of special memories, and those will never go. And that's why I treasure that place, and I would love for more people to experience it. So check out Bali in the northeastern area. My recommendation.
All right. And what about? Go ahead,
Dalton.
Nope.
Did you get to see any? Seriously. Did you get to see any ocean sunfish mola mola encounters? I know sometimes they off Gili Islands and something. They're allegedly there as a nursery, but I don't know. Didn't see any.
My dude, I'm not much of a man for cold water. So diving for me is diving in board shorts and maybe a rash guard. We're
in the same boat. We're in the same boat.
Yep, that's my kind of deal. Like I'll take a 3mm when I have to put on a 5mm. I'm questioning myself. Is this worth it? It's like it usually is worth it. Don't get me wrong, for all of those cold water people diver, but I have yet to see a mola mola underwater. I did, however, see him above water from a liverboard. So I'll take
that counts.
That's a win.
Yeah.
All right, Dalton.
I was going to ask about Limbe.
Limbe. Well, I guess that's something you're riding this on the same track right here again because macro.
Yeah.
If Bali is amazing, and when I mention Raja Ampat being the Mecca, the holy place, whatever you want to call it, Lembe is that for macro photography.
Okay.
So it's muck diving. It's the best muck diving in the world because I've yet to experience it better. A lot of people tell me about some areas in the Philippines, but let's talk about this thing called the Coral Triangle. It's a big, massive thing. The further you go out of the center, the less coral variations you have, the less aquatic life you have. And the closer you're in, the more you have, obviously. Guess who's at the center? Indonesia. And Lembe happens to be right there too. So it's a wild roller coaster ride for finding critters and really geeking out. And that's personally my favorite underwater creature is a nudibranch. I love nudibranchs. It's their variations, the sheer amount of them, and the size variations. It's just the most phenomenal thing. And if you'll see the usual suspects, and you're like, all right, I've seen that a million times. But then you find this one special dude or dudette, whatever it may be, and it is just so much fun. This is where I tell when I tell my guests, I'm like, you chill and check that out because this is awesome. We're not just gonna go look and be like, okay, and then swim on. No. You look there. That's gonna be.
Now I have to interrupt you for a second, Ronan, because I see you doing what Todd and I do a lot, and it's how do you know if someone's a diver? When they start talking with their hands, we're gonna go this way. Let's go up, let's go down. Hey, look over there. You just everything's talking with your hands, right?
That's how you do it.
Okay.
Exactly right. Yeah, and so I'm sure you've gone to this experience where you have maybe you're leading a dive with an underwater photographer, and like you see the super rare critter, especially if it's a nudie, and you're like, oh my god, this nudie is super rare. You're gonna take a picture of that, and he looks at it and he's like, whatever, snap, and like, you don't understand
exactly.
And the whole dive. You got whatever time you got left, use it all to do this thing.
Exactly. I don't care if you're at 20 bars. I know I said at 20 bars you should be up, but we're already doing the safety stuff. Chill right here and enjoy.
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. So,
I always try to tell new divers, because they're always wanting to see the big stuff. Oh, I want to see sharks. I want to see manta rays. I want to see whale sharks. I want to see whatever. I'm like, no. You really need to dive into the macro. And there's so much diversity there and color and style that it's just amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, talk about alien worlds, just seeing so many crazy things. Like you said, the nudibranchs alone, they're just like insane. And then all the different I remember when I never understood when I first went to Lembe. I knew that was where I was going to get into macro and see all this great stuff. And like, oh, you're going to see octopus, matodi, and this, that. I had no concept of how big, small a blue-wing octopus was. I just knew they were super poisonous. And when we get there and we finally see it, and it's like, it's the size of a golf ball or less. I'm like, holy crap. And then you watch it and it's fascinating. And then flamboyant cuttlefish. And it's like, oh my God, like, look, it's just... Oh man, it is so crazy, and all the crazy stuff you see, and the fact that things that are super rare that you're lucky to see once every several dives everywhere else, it's almost like cheating when you're in Lembe, right? You see.
That's what I was about to say. Exactly what I was about to say. It's like that one time you get that awesome creature somewhere else, Lembe, again. Oh, that's nice. It's like
I've seen 3 on this dive already.
It's the only place that I know where guests or at Lembe Resort, they have this thing where you can request what you'd like to see.
Yeah.
This is not a zoo, friends. So requesting, I want to see a bumblebee shrimp or something like that. Right. That's not just going to happen like this, Or it's like, I want to see a harlequin eating a freaking starfish or whatever. It's not a fish, it's a sea star, so my bad. But regardless, it's like the guys would be like, oh, you want to see that? You want to see a Halimeda ghost pipe fish? Okay, cool. And let me throw in this bonus of the flamboyant cuttlefish that he just mentioned, and the hairy frogfish, and all of these other things, and blah 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 blah. You know, it's just
Yeah. So what do
land-based.
you want to? So then, what do you want to do on day 3? Because we'll get care of all that stuff on day 1 and 2, no problem.
Basically, and after that, you just perfect the shot. You know.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned you're a little apprehensive of cold water. So what's your stance on Komodo then, since it can on the ground in the curve get a little bit chilly?
It's a give and take, right? So.
Yeah, it is.
As is all in life. And Komodo is one of those things. You have to take the cold, but you will be rewarded with a spectacle that is breathtaking. So yeah, I mean, I love macro. I love geeking out on the small stuff, but you know, everybody starts with the big stuff and wants to see the big stuff. And Komodo offers you that stuff. You know, it will give you the mantas, the reef mantas up in the north, if you're lucky. The pelagic ones or oceanics down in the south. You will have a variety of rays out there, you know, anything from eagle rays to marble rays and all of that good stuff. And you have your sharks. So how awesome is that? But Komodo is not for the faint-hearted, in my opinion, especially if you hit it at a time where it's kicking. I mean, it's a channel, guys. Water gets funneled.
Yeah.
Bajillions of gallons. How's that? Gallons?
Sure. Look at you.
Yeah,
Liters
through there.
Liters.
You can do liters.
It's like, wait a minute. Can I say ounces? Isn't that
Sure.
a measurement? But
Yeah.
You can.
anyway, let's not get into that. That's just, we got it. Komodo is just wicked, you know. So up in the north, I would still dive in board shorts, but the further south you go, it is inevitable. You have to start wearing neoprene. And for me, at least, I would try to do a few of the dives with a 3 mil or something like that. But I live on a boat, so I don't get much exercise, and the food's phenomenal. And it just happens to be that my favorite pastime or activity, for that matter, in all of life is eating. So yeah, I dig in. And I mean, Todd, just remember the food on Coralia is just like, you know.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. But I also remember half of our
Joe.
conversations in between dives were just about food.
Yep.
And the food that you missed from the States. Yep.
Exactly,
And
dude. Oh.
good food in Germany. So yeah. I'm with you on that. I think we're both with you on that.
Yeah, Todd would tell me how good the food was there, and we did a liveaboard in Maldives. Food was not so good there.
Yeah, no. I've done a few trips on the Maldives as well, and yeah, seriously, the standard in Indonesia is world class, you know. And it's and that's the thing, you know. It's like I'll dive in colder water with less millimeters, just in the hopes of shivering off some bio.
Bioprene.
Right.
That's awesome. I've got a lot of bioprene going on these
Right.
days.
So let's
Right. I think COVID's
so
added.
let's talk. Yeah. So let's talk about what happened around the time, you know, COVID hit. Obviously, I think it got, you know, this started happening, you know, the end of 2019, November, December.
Yeah.
When did
For us it was like in March, right, when it really they could shut things down.
And
Ooh,
so then
you are presenting me with the firing line right now. I don't know if we want to talk about your president. But
Oh no, we're not.
Well,
we're not
no,
talking about that.
all right.
We do no
I think-
politics on this show.
Yeah, no problem. We do happen to be on the same page there, but
Yeah.
it's been a tough year watching daily press briefings. You're going, what the fuck? But anyways, no, I'm more interested in talking. So, you know, as end of 2019 hits, and then you know, beginning of 2020, January, February, March, and I know even one of the famous resorts in Raja Ampat is Missoula Resort, whatever. They were, you know, struggling to say, oh, you know what? There's an opening if you want to come in May. We have an opening. Normally, you have to wait a couple of years. I'm like, I don't think we can. I don't think we'd be able to get back, even if we wanted to. But more importantly, as things were shutting down, like we talked about, so much of Indonesia is based on tourism, especially in the dive industry. Obviously, is all, you know, foreign tourists coming in. What was that experience like, and for you personally, and then for all your coworker friends? How was it impacted, and how are what has it progressed to today? What's the state of things as we are now? It's December 2020. Where does the state of the industry look?
That is a bit of a grim tale, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's not an easy one. Still trying to figure out myself what's happening. Well, I know what's happening, but what can be done about it? And the thing is, this year has been absolutely crazy, to say the least. And we're all in the same boat. But
Nice.
in that sense, when I got on Coralia, I mentioned the part-time gig where I would only work a certain amount of time in the year. And I had foolishly made plans for 2020 to be traveling and doing all of these cool things, and I remember I was on, at the end of the year, I was still on Coralia, and after New Year's, I jetted over to Europe and stayed in Europe, and actually traveled quite a bit while I was still here. This was January time, so from January till February. I traveled to Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and a few places in Europe in of itself before I then moved back to Indonesia. And at the time is when Corona started, being a thing, and people were talking about it. I noticed it when I went to Egypt, where I actually went on a dive vacation because I hadn't been in decades, and I had dove there when I was younger. And I went to Hurghada, and that was the first time, when we landed, people would come, somebody would come in with their little laser gun and then point it at your head and see whether or not you have fever. And that's when I was like, oh, all right, let's see how this is going. And then, Saudi was still all right in that sense. And Europe, once I was back in Europe and I wanted to leave to Indonesia, the person who was checking me in looked at my passport, and it's a used passport. I use the damn thing all the time, and she's like, oh, this is not in the best condition. I'm like, you're the first person to ever bother me with this. Are you kidding me? She made me buy a cover for it, but long story short, she was asking me, are you sure you want to go? You do know the COVID-19 or coronavirus is currently going rampant in all of Southeast Asia. And I'm like, lady, I live and work there.
Yeah.
And as long as there's flights, unless you tell me there's no flight, I can't give my boss a good enough excuse to say, hey, I'm still stuck in Europe, my bad. So I actually made it back, and I went on another tour. And that's when
this is around what time of year?
This is
around
February.
What month? This is February.
February. Okay. Yep, February, and we're going in towards March.
Yeah.
And that's when, shit hit the fan.
Yep.
Use my French, but yeah. We had a Russian set and European set, so Germans and Swiss people. And we told them, it's like things are going not the way they should be in the world, and we don't know what it's going to be like. And I mentioned the reception part earlier with the cell phone coverage and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we decided to go down south to Misul. And in Misul, you do not have reception. The only thing you have is satellite phone.
Satellite. Yep.
And who has their personal satellite to check in on what the world's doing every now and then? Of course, we did. I knew what was going on. I was still in touch with what was happening in the world. And once we came back in to the Dampier Strait, that's when all the calls came in. That was one of the most sleepless tours I've ever had, having to talk to all of the travel agents, family members, and you name it. It's like I had to deal with this. And then of course with the guests and trying to figure out what to do, and then this was the time when a lot of news just hit and nobody really knew what it was. It was just kind of a lot of scare tactics. And we have these Russians, which was quite hilarious, because we get all these news like, oh yeah, Corona's shutting down countries, blah 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 blah, and then like, what they're doing in our country, you should see. And he showed me lion walking around street. And I'm looking at it. It's like Putin releases lion to keep people at home. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? This is a troll. It's like, it's the internet. I cannot believe what the internet says. It's like, it's ridiculous.
Oh, gosh.
That's funny.
But yeah, we had to evacuate people. So for a few people, the trip ended early, and we got them into an area where we could speedboat them off to the next ferry and back home as soon as possible. And yeah, every day everything changed, and in Indonesia, nobody knew how to really react. It was weird. You know, you could see there was a lot of trepidation in not only my bosses or eyes and the people that I work there, but you know, the Indonesians, they got it. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's not so good. You know, it's like, and of course, it's like wildfire that spreads, and panic. Well, it's not panic, but just this fear was there of what's next, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, trust me, getting out of Raja Ampat wasn't easy.
And when was your last day on the boat? Ish. End of February, beginning of March.
Yeah, something like this.
Okay.
Around that time frame.
Yeah.
I just remember when I was getting off, I was just going to be there for one tour. That's it, and then start my part-time cruise director gig and go traveling. And life said, hell no. And, so I was stuck in. Well, I thought I was going to be stuck in Raja for a while, and I know that sounds fantastic, but no. It's a different story if you visit it. It's a different story once you're actually there and there's nothing else around, you know? It's like, there's internet, but if they run out of gasoline, there ain't no internet until whenever there's gasoline, and who knows when that's going to happen. People were isolating, shutting down, and banning travel. My flight got canceled 4 times, all of these things. My coworkers had just returned as well. And they're like, you better get out of here before everything shuts down. And I made it on a plane the very next day to get me to Bali still. And in Bali, that's when I went into a 5-month isolation period, which was bonkers.
Yeah.
So you isolated in Bali for almost half a year then?
Again, it sounds much more beautiful than it was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you're in at the Ritz-Carlton,
I got all the fruit from the Ritz-Carlton because nobody was there to eat all the fruit. So they were basically showing you all of that stuff for next to nothing. But that's where you could really see how bad everybody was hit. It's easy talking about my experience, but I cannot fathom what it's like for my crew members. And
exactly.
All work in the industry, they're dependent on.
This is their livelihood, right?
And it's gone like this, and we don't know when it's going to start again. Back in March, we were like, all right, we're looking into November. It's like we'll wait it out. It'll be a few months. The summer won't be as good. We'll have time for dry dock, and then each month it got kicked back. Okay, maybe January next year, maybe this, maybe that, and forget about it. Even if the vaccine is distributed, not within the next year or so, or 2 years at least, will it start to be able to recuperate from the damage that COVID has wreaked.
Any word on when things will open back up for you guys in Indonesia? No. Yeah.
Who's to say?
Yeah. Same boat. Yeah. We're all getting in that same boat now.
Yep.
Yeah, we had a trip to Japan last year. It was supposed to go last April, and so we delayed it because the airlines don't let you push it out a year. So we delayed it until next March, and Japan's not going to be open in March. So we have no one
Olympics,
and no one quite knows. Yeah, so Olympics are going to be quite the test. Yeah,
this year I wanted to go to Japan too because. This has nothing to do with diving, but I love skateboarding, and it made it into the Olympics, and I wanted to see that. And I wanted to see a huge Gundam that they built because that's awesome. I was like, this is going to be so great, but it didn't happen because all of this. And who's to say? They say 2021 is going to be Olympic year, but again, how?
It's going to be tight. Yeah, I mean,
it's like, okay. The only people who've really done it are the UFC, and they've done it the best, in my opinion.
And the NBA and NBA had their bubble, but they can't do that with the Olympics.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, actually, you could do that because, I guess I don't know.
So many different events.
Olympic camps? Do they? Since Munich, they don't do Olympic camps anymore. I don't know. Because that went way bad back in the day.
Yeah.
But,
But it's going to be tough. I'm sure obviously they're going to try. It's going to be right on the borderline. Maybe it'll be athlete only event, but if that's the case, why not just postpone it? Because you're not going to generate any revenue if that's the case.
Exactly.
So
Right.
And that's what it's all about,
Crazy.
revenue. But besides all of that,
yeah, but
Japan, amazing place for nudie pranks, by the way. Really cool.
so you've been diving in Japan. So
No. It's a dream of mine, actually.
okay.
I want to go to Okinawa. I'm going to surf a little bit there as well as diving.
Nice.
And I'll even check out the colder spots. But a lot of pictures that I've seen when I look at where they've been shot, especially when it comes to nudie pranks, a lot of them say Japan. It's cold water diving. So here I am, willing to say I'll jump in there just to get my kicks from this tiny, minuscule thing that the majority of the world doesn't even know exists.
Right. So cool.
Dry suit.
So have you talked to some of your friends, local Indonesian residents? Like, what are they doing to bide their time, find local jobs? Like, I'm sure all the dive masters, all the folks that we met have got to be struggling to find work and get income for the family. It's got to be tough times over there.
Dude, that's to say the least. Yeah, this is going to take a tragic turn if we continue talking about this. It's kind of sad, actually, because there is nothing to do. What are you going to do when there is nothing to make money from? Because your viewers, you, myself, we're the very reason most of these people have jobs.
Right.
Fortunately, a lot of companies have kept a lot of the key crew members on, to keep things going. Coralia, for instance, is in dry dock right now. She is getting prepped for the eventuality that we will have guests next year.
Yeah, but there's only so much you can do to the boat. Yeah.
Exactly, but that little bit is going to employ a few people for that moment. They will have the week or two or a month of scraping barnacles off of a freaking hull, but that makes puts not bread on the table, but rice on the table for them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know it's a downer, but I think it's good to bring to attention, because it's easy to forget what makes the industry run and call attention to it, and obviously make sure that people realize that there's crew out there, and if there's anything that it's nice to hear that operators, like I'm sure the Corlea is finding ways to keep as many people employed as they can before they can go out of business or can't afford to anymore. So it's good to at least hear the folks that we're used to working with are doing whatever they can to help out.
And the people actually, start to realize that, like us, we don't have it so bad. I mean, we're not scraping by any stretch of the imagination like some people are in Indonesia and some of these other places.
Yeah.
But hopefully things will get back, when vaccines come out and travel will come back. But like I said, we don't know when. Hopefully second half of the year, maybe.
Hopefully.
We'll see. Yeah. I know we all want to get to diving again, get to traveling again. I miss it. I mean,
we had Africa booked for this past September, and we had to push it till hopefully next September. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So in the one, for sure.
Yeah. So you finally made it back to your homeland your other homeland in Germany after being stuck in Bali for 5 months. And what's it like being back? You've gotten to at least drive around a couple different cities, right? Was hang out with family and.
Yes. So fortunately enough, currently they are revving up the restrictions once more. So there's a curfew at 9 o'clock now, which is all right. George Orwell, you said it. You really wrote it back then. This is happening. I was able to travel a bit and see friends and family, which did a world of good for me. It's like it's crazy. On a boat, I never have time. And now I have this very rare luxury of having way too much time.
Right.
And it's a blessing and a curse, because, there's the social parameters of what are you doing? It's like, are you doing much of anything at all? It's like, everybody's trying to get by, but to be able to live without a worry at this point in time is the utmost luxury. And
Yeah.
currently, at this point in time, I get to have that, and I cherish it. I cherish it
Yeah.
very much because it gives me time to reflect. It gives me time to see whether or not different avenues should be explored,
Right.
regardless of how hard it is. Yeah, I'm still connected to the tourism industry and what may come of it. So of course I have hopes that everything will recover swiftly, and I will be able to also come back, work, and dive. It's
Yeah.
nuts. I go diving all the time. It's like when you said earlier you didn't go on every dive. It's like, dude, because I can go diving anytime I want.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not meant to be a bad thing. It's just
Yeah.
it's not even to say I've seen it. It's like that's the worst thing you could do as a diver when you're like, oh, I've been there already. I've seen it. No dive.
Yeah, man.
No two dives are the
Yep.
same. The things you can find, the things you can refine or whatever, it's just, that's something that I miss, and
Yeah.
it's given me so much. It's given me a purpose. It's given me a direction, and COVID took that away, so it's been an adjustment. It's been difficult, but thanks to friends, family, I get to keep a clear head and keep my head above water, for that matter.
That's great.
Now, what do you think, is there something above cruise director that you want to set a goal toward? Do you want to be, boat captain? I don't know that is any better than or higher than, or
Build his own boat, own your own resort.
Own your own boat. Do you have what's your ambition?
My ambition in that sense is non-existent, because I've also seen what goes on behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
and as fine and dandy as everything may appear to the eyes, it's not always that easy. And taking that massive risk of building something, it's just from all of my bosses at Pendito, Amira, and Coralia to venture on that path and say, I'm going to take that risk and build this ship and do this thing in the hopes that I'll be able to put food on the table, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's like, sure, some people are more wealthy and everybody needs their toys. It's okay. It's cool, but it costs a lot to do that. And I
Yep.
don't think in this day and age, it's an intelligent choice to make, to be honest.
Yep.
And yeah, you never know what happens. Look at COVID.
Sure.
It just,
Yep.
the rug gets pulled out from under your feet, and then what? Because if you're
Yep.
the owner of a ship like that, the thoughts that must go through your head, it's like
Yeah.
the fear, the trepidation, the anxiety. It's just, because it's not just you and your family, it's you, the crew, the people,
Yep.
and all of these things. And it's just, wow. I have utmost respect for all of those people who are holding their heads up high and trying to get through it and working for a better tomorrow. It's the best, it gives me hope.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I don't know what I'm going to do.
that's fine. There's something to be
I
said
don't
for,
either.
again, I think, it's good that for the people that want to have the ambition, and it's got, like you said, it's got to be a tremendously difficult time for them right now. But not everyone has to have that ambition to, I need to own my own resort. Like, there's something to be said for, especially if you're a diver, you realize the fact that you get to appreciate nature, the lifestyle, especially working in the industry, showing other people your worlds that they've never seen before, and being able to have, your boat, your cabin that's this small. You don't have a ton of possessions. You have a nice, easy, low key lifestyle, and you get to see some of the most amazing things on the entire planet, and then share that with so many different people. That's amazing, an amazing life as it is. So, For the people that want to do more, that's great. But for the people that you've already at the Mecca at some point, like you're in
Oh yeah.
the best place to dive in the world, and still can continue to share that amazing thing with other people. So, man, you're already living a lot of people's
ambition like
dreams.
that is always or can be a double-edged sword, because the further up the ladder you climb, the more you look back and go, man, I should have just stayed being a dive master.
It's a yeah. I mean, it's
It
a
was
risk,
much easier then.
But then there's other things like conservation and like formal and informal. There's lots of opportunities. They're already working in Raja Ampat that's doing things to help participate in that. There's some great opportunities there. I know we talked about it a little bit, even in planning your dive itineraries for Corlea, that was always a consideration, right? Everyone's in Mosul will have to go crowded to go to some of the most famous manta dives. We're going to say, well, you know what? There's hundreds of dive sites. You know, we don't want to sit there and destroy the one thing that everyone had. So why don't we just go to these other dive sites that are less explored? Because it's a win-win. It's less stress on this when we have hundreds of boats. How many boats, Ronan, are there in Raja Ampat? 100 something now from 4.
By now, well, actually, by now it might have been reduced by quite a bit, which I am so sorry to say.
Last year.
It's a silver lining of
yes,
the bad news,
unintended benefit. Yeah,
let's say in 2019.
In that sense, but yeah, no, it's ridiculous. It's over 80 at least at this point in time. I stopped counting at 50. I was like, because you are so you're looking at a world map and you're looking at this island nation, and you see the space, this big ocean must be nice, right? But no,
right.
The problem is. Of course, us divers, we want to know what it's like where other people have been. Is it worth it to go?
Right.
And when I talked about, when you asked me about the locations that I've been to, it's like, there's a reason Raja Ampat is the Mecca, where it's the number one. And the problem with that, though, is a lot of people have reported on it. And then they report on specific dive sites where they've had this amazing dive. And people read this, and unbeknownst to them, they form this idea that this is going to be what it's going to be like, so that's what they're going to expect. And when they go there, that's what they want to have. And if they don't get that, they're going to be disappointed. Yep. And as I said, you have to juggle these things. And it's like, I could literally take you to a world famous dive site called Magic Mountain, which is magical. Right. It's true to its name and it's fantastic, but everybody, all of the boats, all of the resorts, Miso, they all go there. Miso Resort is an amazing concept in which they are actually the shepherds of that general region. They made it a protected area. So MPAs are few and far between in Indonesia. And MPAs is what every diver should want to be able to dive in. And they are the ones controlling and patrolling these things. And that's why there's a hierarchy in things and there's a rule and order to things where you actually have to radio in. It's like, I will wake up at 5 a.m. to radio if I can with the other boats to see whether or not there's a schedule going on. Or at 5 p.m, check in with the resort and say, hey, can I have a slot? Because then you are in the system. And that's how the dive site at least gets a break from overcrowdedness, because imagine each boat has up to at least 16 guests, like the bigger ones or the normal ones, whatever, 16 to 20 guests, less for a few others. But that's just your boat, plus your dive guides, plus moi, who wants to go diving today, that's just over 20 people in the water already.
And then multiply
imagine
that by 80.
Exactly. And then boat A and B and C come in and want to dive at the same time, because 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning is the magic hour for the mantas to come in, or at least such as the folklore. And then you have 60 divers there, and it's just nuts. At least that doesn't happen in Raja, but I can say that is an example of certain other dive sites which, suffer from that. So it would be a possibility to see whether or not there's something to be done in that aspect once it starts recuperating. I hope this time is being used well by the Indonesian government to check on their seas, that there's no bombing or anything. and that the places get to recover. But just imagine, all these dive sets are being left alone right now.
Yeah.
And then when you come back, Raja alone is so ridiculously rich with life.
Yeah.
It's going to be way too overwhelming. It's going to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no
Imagine that.
words for that.
Imagine your first tour back and those dives that you go on. It's
I'm
going to
diving
be
every dive 4 times a day.
and just like how noticeable, like you'll be like, man, it's just going to be so amazing. I'm sure it's going to be burned in your brain when you finally get to go back and dive those. So we'll
Ronan,
have to
I think
follow
what you
up
meant
with
to
you.
say is we're diving 4 dives a day.
Right.
Yeah, we are diving. Everybody here,
we're coming.
we're doing this.
Wrong. Yes.
I don't care if you're
Exactly.
dying. This is
Whatever
not
your
vacation.
It's like,
whatever your
exactly.
first boat back, you tell them you've got it booked.
It's mandatory.
You tell them you've already got it booked.
Switching topics, you said your dad's an underwater photographer or was an underwater photographer.
Yes, he was.
We didn't really talk about the boat. Did you not get into underwater photography? Did you dabble in it? What's
Break it up.
Here you are. I can hear you now.
Cut back.
okay? So did you? Yeah. So I had asked that your dad was an underwater photographer. Did you ever dabble in it? Did you kind of just leave that to the guests to do? Do you just stay clear? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a stigma kind of thing. It's like, oh, your dad's an underwater photographer. You must be an underwater photographer. You know, if that's a family thing for your family, that's fine and dandy. But
Yeah.
I happen to be related to the dude who wrote a few books that are somewhat known in the industry. So I never thought that anybody would necessarily compare me per se, but it's inevitable. You are going to be compared. You know, it's like, and what my dad did that I find much more respectable, no offense to all of the new tech gadget freaks out there, he shot analog. None of it was digital. So that shot that you saw in that book was that moment. It wasn't a choice from 50 million other ones, you know?
Yeah.
So, and with being a guide, you know, when I do guide, I do not have the luxury to be taking pictures of everything. You guys have
right,
that
of course.
responsibility.
Yep.
So I have to do that. And when I do my free dives or my fun dives, I'll do my fun dives, you know, but essentially I let the guests take care of that. And, you know, I was able, I'm allowed to handle a lot of these things. You know, a lot of people even want to try it, you know, it's like Eddie from Manila, the guy from Pendito, he used to film with this massive red camera. I mean, we're talking about a monster. We're not talking about the new ones where they're like compact and everything.
Yeah.
No, we're talking about
The
before
giant.
4K was a thing, you know, and it took 2 people to lift it. So me and one of the crew members used to lift it, get it down the stairs and put it on the dinghy and then go to the dive site. He would jump in. Then I would heave the thing by myself, do my little, you know, for Gray Skull. No, just kidding. And then just give it to him. But underwater, you could play with that thing on your finger like this.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing is a bus. You're holding it like this and you're like, "Rrr." But yeah, you know, filming the schools of fish in Raja with that it's actually, that's one of my favorite dive visuals, if that's of interest. But, you know, seeing just a bait ball going nuts, the beautiful iridescent colors and the reflections, and then just tunas or whatever have you shooting through there, trying to get to them. That is one of the coolest things. That's why there should never be, oh, I'm just a macro diver. Oh, I just like big things. Live it all, enjoy it all. That's what it's there for.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that was one of my favorite dives on our Corlea was, I don't remember what it was. It was an afternoon shallow dive, but it was just this huge school of fish that was with us the entire dive. That was just hanging out, and it was just amazing. Thousands and thousands just everywhere. And you could just swim along with them and slowly glide through and just, I mean, it's such, you could be in a trance. Like there's no getting, like, I think I had my macro set up, but I didn't really care. There was frogfish. I remember their guests were all excited about all these frogfish. I'm like, no, I'm just going to sit here and play with this massive wall of fish. And it was so amazing. It was great. Definitely one of the highlights.
That's a pro tip, by the way, for all of you divers there, keep your head on a swivel.
Yep.
Don't just look at the wall. don't ever
Yep.
just look at the wall.
Yeah.
Because as beautiful as that might be, you never know what's swimming by.
Exactly. Yep, that is true. And that it's funny. You're one of the first people that worked in the dive industry that I heard that when they go on vacation, also will go somewhere else to dive. Usually, most of the dive masters that I talk to or cruise directors, they want to go in the snow or they just want to go home and do whatever. You're probably the one and only person I know that actually say, "Oh yeah, I'll go to the Red Sea because I haven't been there and dive there." So it's truly in your blood, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there are moments where, especially when I used to be on the boat for long times, where I just wanted to have a land experience where I didn't really want to do anything. And the trip to Egypt was a thing for my cousin's 30th birthday, you know, and
Okay.
they were diving, you know, getting, you know, their feet wet for the first time or one of the first few times. And they're hooked, you know, him and his girlfriend. We went there with this whole shebang. She did her advanced open water divers, so she could down to 80 meters and whatnot, and we just had a blast. I mean, my cousin, I've been diving for 20 plus years. He's been diving for 5 or something like that, 6, 7 years. He's been to Komodo with me, and he's been to Raja with me.
Nice.
This dude's been spoiled. So I told him, it's like, we got to go somewhere where it's a little bit more realistic. Let's go to Egypt, you know? It's like, it's still dope. It's still really cool stuff to see, but it's definitely not Raja, you know?
Say, bring him out here to California where, you know, the water might get to 70 in the summer and, you know, visibility is
Ronan's
15 feet.
Ronan's,
thank you, but no thank you.
vetoing that one.
I'll come to surf, but not to dive.
Right.
Fair enough. Well, Ronan, thanks so much for all this time. But before we let you go, Dalton and I usually have a little thing that we do called the dive brief, where we just have 5 rapid fire questions that we ask every guest. Don't worry, don't get too nervous. They're pretty easy ones. I'm going to give Dalton here just a quick second to pull it up on his notes. Let me know when you got it, Dalton.
I'm good.
All right. So, okay, question number 1, Ronan. What is your favorite dive snack?
Yeah, so much for fire questions because I'm going through the roster of things that I usually like.
Yeah, you can give me your top 3 if it's easier.
On which boat? It's like dive snacks. Anything baked. To be honest, anything sweet and delicious.
Okay.
All right. What's your favorite piece of dive gear?
That's a good one, actually. I'd say fins because nowadays you can even go with the wetsuit. You can go nuts. I had a Bruce Lee wetsuit for a while there, but
nice.
Yeah, dude, the yellow
with the black stripe.
Nice.
Yeah, heck yeah, man,
Nice.
it's the best, dude.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Oh, there you go. Do you have a picture of you in that? We can make that the podcast profile
actually,
pic.
and I'll send it to you.
Nice.
And
There we
if you
go.
put a speech bubble going, what time?
That
That would be the best.
is
I'll
awesome.
send you that picture for sure. But
Awesome.
yeah, I'd say, I mean, essential diving equipment, obviously a regulator, but it had to be a cool regulator. So I like doing
whatever's cool. Whatever's the coolest. It could be. It doesn't have to be the most essential coolest. Whatever.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like you said, your
It doesn't have to be
Bruce
the
Lee
most
wetsuit.
expensive. It just has to be cool, and that's why I like fins because it does show a little bit of personality with different divers. You know, there's always the ninja diver who's going all black.
Yeah.
I'm much more of a colorful individual, so I have my pink fins, I have my white fins. You know, it's just like you need to see me, so that's what I'm doing it. And plus, I like colors.
Yeah,
I like it.
So I love my full foot fins. I've got blue ones and red ones, but I mix match them. So I wear a blue one and a red one at the same time.
That's what's
right,
up.
baby.
Yeah, that's when I guide and I instruct, I say just look for the mismatched fins. You'll see.
Yeah,
kind of
that's a good thing.
You don't have to conform with everyone else just because they say just do what you want.
Exactly.
Okay, question number 3: if you could choose somewhere to dive that you haven't been before, where would you go?
Japan.
Nice.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
That's an easy one. So going back, similar to number 1, what is your favorite post-dive drink?
Oh, probably any tea with ginger in it.
Okay.
Right on.
All right.
Yep.
Your favorite sea animal? I think we covered this too.
Nudibranch.
Well, since that one was so easy.
Wait. What section? Because there's, of course, I like manta rays and I like all the other cool stuff.
All right.
Right.
Psychedelic frogfish. How about that?
So we're
There
gonna,
we go.
I like that.
Twice.
There we go.
So we're going to go
Nice.
for a bonus round, and we'll say, what's the most frustrating thing about diving?
Watching people with bad buoyancy.
Oh, so true.
Amen.
So
to that.
true.
Amen
Easy one
to that.
too.
Yep.
Yes.
Very good.
Right.
So
on.
where did you see your 2 psychedelic frogfish, by the way?
Oh, my man. This place called Ambon, or Ambon actually, which is in the Moluccas, and wow, it is phenomenal. You're going into this, it's like a strait that goes into a harbor area, and you're diving with a lot of trash next to you, diapers, you name it,
Plastic
batteries,
bags,
everything's there.
Yep.
And there's a slope of some, what do you call them, the mushroom corals. A lot of them are flipped over because that's where they like to hide. And then twice in my life, I was able to see for a long time without anybody disturbing me before I got the other people. That never happened. I saw it, I found it, and I got the other people and let them have it.
Right away. Right.
I actually enjoyed that. And I was like, before and after, when people take pictures of it, just to look at it, because that's a very cool creature.
Yes.
Not everybody's gotten to see that. People literally, the second it gets posted, people travel from wherever they are to that destination in the hopes of getting the opportunity to shoot a picture of that. So,
yeah. Very cool. That's awesome. Well, man, Ronan, thank you so much for joining us today. Man, I'm sure we could talk for 7 more hours, but it's late over there in Frankfurt. Maybe we can do it again. Once you guys the world gets turned right side up again, and you get a break from your first time back on Corlea, and we can talk about a trip report. We can kind of touch base, and hopefully under more exciting circumstances.
Or we can do one from the Corlea.
In person, yes. We'll do it in person, not from the boat.
That
or
would be the best way to do that.
Amen. We'll see what we can. We'll see if we can do it. Keep us in mind. You have last minute cancellations. We'll just fly out and come meet you.
Roger that.
Roger.
It was great meeting you, bud. For sure.
Hey, likewise. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Again, apologize that it took so long.
Oh,